we've got here is a broken board. What we're going to try to do in this video is I'm going to glue the board back together, pull all the glass off it, square up the rails and clad the whole thing in paulownia or timber. So the first thing we're going to do obviously is to stick the board back together. Now we want to get this rocker right, that's the most important thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out to a friend of mine's place, Bruce, and he'll get the rocker as close as possible to what it originally was. Now we've got the board stuck back together. Bruce has done a great job. One thing to remember about this, I've never done this before, so it's all a bit of trial and error as we go. Obviously, I'd like to see this board recycled. I just thought it'd be a good challenge to see what can be done if it actually can have timber laminate on it, and we'll see how it turns out. So after I stripped all the glass off the board, pulled the fin boxes out, I drew a 10mm line along the edge of the rail. Then I took the sanding block and I took that 10mm off to give me a square rail, a nice edge, to be able to attach the rail bands. Because I'm going to make the board thicker, because I like 5mm timber on top, 5mm timber on the bottom, I'm going to actually make the board wider, so I'll put another 10mm on the whole complete outside of the board. So generally speaking, it's not going to be the same board, it's going to be wider, it's going to be thicker, but that's what this whole experiment's about, see if it'll work. I used expandable foam to fill in the holes, and all the fin holes, stuff like that worked okay. I then cut those pieces of foam off with a sharp knife and then sanded them back smooth. Also what I've done is planed the stringer down a bit. When I ripped all the fiberglass off, the string was a little bit proud, sticking up higher, so I just got the plane and run that down a little bit just to take the edge off that. Now it doesn't really matter if the board looks rough, because the timber's going to go over the top of that and you're not going to see any of it. So you spend hours fixing all the holes and stuff, but as long as the timber follows the general shape of the foam, it should be okay, I think. Grab a long piece of cardboard and some dress pins and pin the cardboard to the blank. Then carefully trace the rail onto the cardboard, so you end up with a template of the rail shape. Put that aside, as we will need that to put the rail together. I'm using 45 by 5mm paulownia strips. I've also had this timber dressed and had a bead and cove cut into the edge. Now cut up some smaller pieces with the bead and cove at right angles to the length of the board. Take some foaming glue and spread thinly on the squared rails, and place the timber pieces locking together the bead and cove. Now there's no need to clamp, but use a small pin to stop the blocks sliding off the rail. Using a pull saw, trim back the edge and plane down close to the foam blank. Sand off the glue with a block to get a smooth, even finish. Now we're ready to laminate the bottom. I used an old kettle with a piece of 50mm steel pipe for my steamer. Leave it so it's nice and pliable. It's quite surprising how malleable the timber becomes when steamed. Roughly bend the strips and place into the board clamps. I have used a plastic membrane to protect the blank from the water from the steamed timber and the glue. When the timber dries and has taken shape overnight, remove and run a bead of glue in the cove, replace and clamp back into position. When it's all glued up, remove the clamps Lightly sand any glue lumps off. Then peel the bottom plate off the blank. Remove the plastic membrane and return the slab to the board. Trace the outline, cut, then clean up with a plane. Well, there you go. Cleaned a bit of glue up underneath on the inside. Get rid of any lumps. I've cut it out, cleaned it back pretty close to the mark that I penciled on. Sits on there pretty good. Not a lot of tension in the timber. Actually tucks in there quite nice. Pretty happy with that. Still got the concave through the bottom here. Actual reverse V. And the concave's actually in the piece of paulownia. There's a little bit of rocker there, I suppose. Not as much as the board, but it'll pull down quite good, I think. I'll mix up some putty here for this, and we'll just butter it on, about peanut butter thickness, I reckon. And then that'll give me plenty of working time to get it on and clamped on. Wow, that was a lot of work, but it's on. With the deck, I'm going to try something a little bit different this time. Instead of doing the whole piece and gluing it all in one big slab, one big sheet, I'm going to do individual pieces. So the same as before, I've steamed these strips of timber and I've clamped them into position to get the bend into them. So when the timber dries, I'll take the clamps off and they should have a reasonable bend, the same as the board profile. And then I'm going to glue them down individually. From the experience of the bottom, I'm going to give this a go anyway and see how it works. You might notice that I've got plastic on the deck here. That's just so when I'm steaming the timber, I'm not going to get any moisture in the blank because the wood's quite wet when you steam it. So I just put this plastic membrane on there just to protect the blank. So what I'll do, I'll steam all the pieces and then I'll glue them individually. As we're working down around towards the rails here, the curve gets quite tight. So with my 45mm strips, if we keep using those, it sort of doesn't quite sit in there well, there's a bit of a gap. So what I've done is I've cut some of these strips up into skinnier pieces. So when you put them in, they tend to hug the curve a little bit better. And we end up with a tighter curve. So once we've done all that and we've squared all the rails up on the board, ready to stick the rails on, we've got to come back to that paper template that we made. We'll cut that out, then trace that onto a piece of paulownia or a bit of ply, whatever. Something a bit stiffer, easier to work with. And then what I've done, because these rails have actually got quite a bit of rocker in them as they wrap around the board, I've glued 2 strips of my paulownia together, or actually 3. I put another piece on the front to allow for the nose kick. And I've traced the template onto this. Now just remember, I've made it a little bit wider because we've put 5mm thickness of paulownia on the deck and on the bottom. That's obviously made it 10mm thicker than what the original template that we made off the foam blank. We'll cut them out and then we'll glue them on. You need some F-clamps, some little wedges of timber, and a couple of these funny looking corner clamps. First of all, we'll put these yellow clamps on the ends, on the nose and on the tail, and then move it down out of the way like that. That'll help when we put the next layer of timber on. Next up, we put the F-clamps on and make sure we leave a little gap in here. Okay, then we get our piece of timber and we'll slide this in temporarily up inside these clamps and then just move it out of the way so we can get some glue on the top of this surface here. Nice thin coat of foaming glue, and then pull it into position. Then put the wedges in to get it nice and tight underneath the F-clamps. Pull the yellow clamps around so they're in position. Then if there's any gaps, we'll wrap it up with pack and tape. Okay, that's how I've been putting the layers on the rails. There's probably easier ways to do it, but you know, I'm just using what I got. Seems to be working okay, so I'll just keep going. Okay, so now we've got all the rail bands on. Just got to clean it all up. Put a tail block on it, obviously a nose block as well, and then I'll need to shape the rails and pull the rails over. There you have it, the finished product. It ended up being about 2 inches longer, about half an inch thicker, and about an inch wider than what the original board was before it broke in half. So it's ready now to either glass or to rub oil on it. I think I'll be rubbing oil, a bit of beeswax and tung oil mix. Doesn't come up quite as shiny as fiberglass does, but has this nice satin finish to it. It'll also be a little bit darker, a little bit more of a honey colour. This is just the paulownia, raw paulownia. It's quite a white timber. With the boxes, I did end up replacing or recycling the original boxes that were there, mainly because they were blue, and I just thought that blue on wood didn't really look that good. So I decided to put some black ones in. I think the total weight of it now is about a little bit over 4 kilo, maybe 4, yep. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed this little experiment. The real test, I suppose, is going to be down in the water. See if it goes in the waves. So hopefully that'll work.